Today on Locked On Red Wings, should Steve Yzerman explore a buyout of a player? And if so, who? Scotty and I believe that it should probably be used as just a last resort.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. And, we had the plan to do another trade, hypothetical for you guys. But then the news dropped, and, it was news any of us could have anticipated. But thank God Puckpedia stays on top of this to remind us that the buyout window opens up 48 hours after the end of the Stanley Cup Final. And that should be, I think, Scotty, Friday, because that was... Cup Final ended on Tuesday, late at night, so Wednesday, Thursday, so it should be Friday, if my math is right. Could be wrong. My math is terrible. Honest to God, I dropped out of pre-calc in college. It's bad. But anyways, if it opens up on Friday, Scotty, I think that opens up a conversation about, are there players on the Red Wings that should be bought out? Because the Red Wings, while they have close to $20 million in cap space, a little over actually, they have a couple of RFAs to re-sign, and you and I are of the mindset that we want Yzerman to really take advantage of the cap space he has. But it's going to fill up fast with the ever-rising cap and some of the bigger names that are out there. And so he may need, after a signing or two, in our dream scenario, a couple extra $1 million to make things work and get 23 players under the cap. So if so, who are the top candidates for Steve Yzerman to buy out? Let's start with you, Scotty. Who's your number one candidate in your mind?
Well, I don't think it's I think it's more of a debate between the top two guys, which one is one and which one is two, than it is, throwing out a surprise name that maybe people didn't expect or anything like that. I think it's pretty, as you mentioned, I guess in the cold open, it's pretty clearly Vlad or Justin Holl. I don't know, spin the bottle. I don't know. I feel like if you're asking me for, which one do I think makes the most sense, I think probably Holl. But I don't know. To me, I think Vlad is certainly had a really brutal year, et cetera, et cetera. There's a reason why we're talking about him in this, but if you're to try and shop him or tough it out or anything like that, he's now a rental for the rest of the upcoming season. Maybe you get a bounce back from him. I don't know, maybe you cross your fingers and hope. I don't think there's really any hope for anything changing on the situation that is Justin Holl.
Yeah, and that's I think the biggest part right there is there's a higher possibility of someone like Tarasenko either being dealt because another team is going to bank on him having a bounce-back season or him having a bounce-back season with you. With Justin Holl, you know what he is. He is going to be a third-pairing defenseman that you have to shelter. It's a position you can definitely improve upon in free agency at that role, so getting him off the roster might be a little bit harder via trade because I don't think there's going to be less of a market for him unless you attach an asset to get rid of him. Also, mind you, I think he has a partial no-trade clause as well, so that's going to even more whittle down the amount of teams that can want to take him. It's a 10-team no-trade list. So you look at that and you compare those two players, I think it does make more sense to potentially buy out Justin Holl. Because if you buy him out, that would give you a savings of $2.26 million this season, while obviously costing you $1.13 million next year. That's because when you buy a player out, if they're over 26 years old, you double the amount of time remaining on the contract, and they only get paid 2/3 of what they're owed per season. So his $3.4 million cap hit would go down to 1.13 this season and 1.13 next season. And that's where you get the savings of 2.2 because this would be the final year of his contract. And then next year where he would be off the books, you're still paying him. So it'd be an additional 1.13. So that gives you an extra 2.2 to play with this offseason, and that could be the difference between, a bottom 6 defenseman and a top 4 defenseman. Bottom pairing defenseman or a top 4 defenseman. So, those little bit
bottom 6 defenseman.
Yeah, I play anywhere in the lineup.
I'm bottom 6. I guess honestly, you should say I'm a top 6 defenseman. That's
top 6.
Really,
I'm in the lineup.
That's what you should classify yourself as, a top 6 defenseman.
Yeah, I'm in the lineup every day. That's the upside there. Mainly because we don't have enough players show up every week to afford to bench me. I'm sure they would if they could.
Yeah, it's all right. Top 6, dude.
And the Tarasenko thing, like, I would consider it. I would never do. Here's the thing: I don't want to do 2. You only get so many buyout slots. Yeah. One's already being used on Justin Applicator, which kind of goes to another point we'll talk about later about why you should be cautious about buyouts. But Tarasenko I would consider because obviously you'd get more immediate savings. You would go up from $2.2 to $3.1 million in savings this season and still owe him a 1.5 next year. So it'd cost you more the following season. But I just think that you don't need to do that with Tarasenko. I think there's someone out there that you can. I mean, you managed to find ways to ship out Fabry by attaching a 4th. You can do the same thing with Tarasenko, who has more upside potentially left than a Robbie Fabry. So it's just when I'm considering those 2 as the primary candidates, I would consider both, but I would definitely lean more towards Holl. But Scotty, my first option would be to buy out neither. Honest to God. Because I think that buying out a player should be your last resort. If you think this player does not contribute anything on the ice, you don't want them in your everyday lineup, and there's no market for them, that's when you should, that ratio of what they bring to the roster versus what they're getting paid is so skewed that you're like, this is worthwhile adding an extra year of paying this player to get him off my roster. Because that's basically, think of it as a trade, as in, okay, the trade is they're off my roster, but I have to pay them for twice as long. And that's why we also lead off with Holl and Tarasenko, because they have 1 year left, so you're only paying them for an additional year. The longer they have, the even longer you're going to be paying them if you buy them out. Like a 2-year remaining becomes 4 years. Abdelkader, right. Which is what I think happened. Abdelkader had 2 years left, and we're still paying him 4 years later. 1 more season left. So I would always say that, no, I don't want the Red Wings to buy somebody out unless they're sure they can't move that piece via trade. And so if they buy Justin Holl out, that would indicate to me they couldn't. But, like, if they can avoid doing so, I mean, Scotty, would you rather just bite the bullet and have him on the roster for 1 more season as, your hopefully best case scenario 7th D-man and just have him be done with, or, rather have the $2 million in your pocketbook this year but still have to pay him a little over 1 next year?
Yeah, so honestly, I think that, to me, I don't want to say even more so than the 2.1 mil, because obviously that's enough to sway an opinion and whatnot. But I think, man, I'm really close to saying even more so than the money, because like the cap is going up, the Wings have cap room, right? Like they have money to spend. Is just the roster spot, man. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that to me, when you compare the if we're just again comparing and contrasting those 2 guys, like, okay, Vlad, if you can't find a partner for him, then yeah, I'd probably rather bite the bullet and just, you can put him on like the 3rd or even 4th line and just hide him down there, only play him in the offensive zone, see if you can get anything going, maybe try and flip him at the deadline for nothing, like, etc. Right? Like that is something that is a little bit more hideable, I'll say, than Justin Holl, unless you're just going to healthy him every night. And if you're going to healthy him every night, I guess that's fine, but that's an expensive contract to healthy, but then you're just kind of biting the bullet the rest of the year. I really think it's the roster spot that matters probably more to me than even the cap, because you need spots open on your blue line and like, obviously that, Petrie left and whatnot, like you have available, but like if you want to improve in the roster spot that is taken up by him, then you have to let him go, and it would free up money. And it's only a little over $1 million next year. It's not like you're taking on some like crippling number going forward or anything like that. It's not some big burden. I think that's kind of the argument for Holl. Tarasenko, I think I lean a little bit more towards the point you just made.
I
get your. I get
always
the,
am just so hesitant when it comes to buying players out because it means you are paying them for longer, and that's more cap space down the line you can no longer have.
Right, but it takes what, $1 million, a 1.5 next year, and that's it. Like
1.15 for Holl, 1.5 for.
Okay, so 1.1 mil for a year.
Yeah,
and the cap's going up. Like what?
Screw it, do it.
Like, I'm just saying, dude. Like, that's, you know what I mean. We're talking about $1 million in the grand scheme of the cap is next to nothing, and it's a roster spot that you're gonna get. I agree with you. I don't want them to buy out both. Well, I say I don't want them to. I wouldn't buy them both out, but like if they did, I'm not gonna cry about it. Like, great. I think Holl. I think Holl really makes sense. I think Vlad is probably the one where it's like you could really go either way. I'm fine if they do it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. That's great. You're clearing up another roster spot and some money this year, but having both of those guys on the books next year is where then you're talking about almost $3 million.
Yeah, I think you've swayed me. I think I was hung up on the principle of it more than I was the actual impact of it. You're right. The 1.1 that's going to cost for an extra year is not going to have a large impact in the grand scheme of things. So with Holl, yeah, you know what? Go for it. Do it. I have no problems with that. You've convinced me. Scotty,
it's also the difference of. I know we got to get to a break. It's we had this conversation last year, and that's then you're talking about paying them for a while. Right?
Yeah, it was like 4 years.
2 years left. This is literally just $1 million the year after, and it's over.
All right. Scotty, we're going to head to a quick break. When we return, we will continue this conversation, but talk about maybe a couple other dark horse candidates the Red Wings could pursue. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings.
Going to talk to you all today about our good friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, as you all know, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking on my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, well, then the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, obviously Holl and Tarasenko, who we just discussed, are the leading candidates for a buyout if they don't get traded, Holl being our number 1. But, there are a couple other names that I wanted to just bring up because I know the fan base will inevitably bring them up at some point, and more so just to kind of swat them away rather than actually humor them. And that's, JT Compher and Andrew Kopp. And it's for the reasons that we just discussed in segment 1 as to why you wouldn't want to buy somebody out, and that's because you're doubling the amount of time you're paying them. Obviously, the immediate cap relief for Andrew Kopp and JT Compher would be pretty substantial. $4 million for this season, and then $2.6 the following year before he is just sitting on your salary cap for the additional 2 years after he's gone or after his contract would have ended. Originally, and that's a 1.687 against, and then JT Compher is $3.48 million of relief for the next 3 years before sitting on the books for an additional 3 years after he would have originally been gone at 1.6. So you're paying, if you buy either of those two guys out, you're paying Andrew Kopp for 4 years, JT Compher for 6. And that's the primary reason why you don't want to buy either of those players out.
6 years is crazy, man.
because that's just a lot longer. And that's why Tarasenko and Holl are the leading candidates for the conversation, just because if you buy them out, it's one additional year at such a low cap hit. And then granted, you could make the same counter argument, like you're only paying comp for 1.6 for 3 years, 3 additional years. And so you could make the argument like, oh, that's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's just the amount of time you're doing it. And when this team's going to be in a cup window, they're going to be nickel and diming for every cent they need, right? Like this team, good teams are close to the cap. And at that point, that 1.6 will become very valuable. So that's why I would really avoid buying out a JT Compher and Andrew Copp at this stage, at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I also think that you are still either trying to find a role for or have an idea of what their like the role for those guys can be going forward. Obviously, Comfort had a huge letdown of a year. You're kind of hoping that he bounces back because like he was fine in his first season with Detroit. So like we'll kind of see how that develops. And then like with Kopp, I mean it's 2 more years, right? And it's like yes, he's not worth what he's being paid. I'm fine saying that, but like you can get you know that you are going to get sound defense, and you know what he brings. You can put him in the bottom 6, whatever. Play him up the middle if you need. Play him on the wing, etc. So I just think that there is at least something salvageable in those two. And on top, like they still have value to the team. Whereas like Justin Holl, I think you could really argue doesn't bring much value to the 2025-2026 Detroit Red Wings. And I think that these two, there's at least still roles for them. It's just a matter of, how well they fit.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Like the initial assessment is just solely based on their salary cap hit that would occur if you were to buy those players out. But to your credit, like these are players that could still have a role on this team. And ideally, if you fill in your top 6 role, I mean, Andrew Copp had a pretty nice bounce back season as 2C before getting hurt under Todd McClellan. Bounce back under Todd McClellan before getting hurt, not blaming Todd McClellan for his injury.
Right.
And that you put him in 3C and he's going to be in a lot better position to provide value in that role, playing against lesser competition. Same thing can be said about JT Compher, especially if you can get him off center. I know he's a right-handed shot, so you're going to want him in the faceoff dot for those specific instances. But like he'll probably be better as a winger than he is as a center. You put both those guys in your bottom 6, and that's a pretty good bottom 6 right there. A pretty good depth for your bottom 6, I should say. And it's just with the cap going up, the cap hit that they're on is not looking doesn't look egregious anymore, especially next year. Like Andrew Copp's 5.6 is going to be bottom 6 money here in a minute. Like I think that the money they make is really not that big of an issue. I do think the problem is you have 2 of them making similar money. So I would, if you could move on from one or the other via trade, not buyout, because of just the sheer amount of time you have to pay them, that'd be an ideal situation. But just solely because of the fact that they still can be role players on this team, and on top of that, that you'd have to pay them for 4 and 6 years more, respectively, right? From this point on, it'd be 4 years for Andrew Copp and 6 years for JT Compher if you were to buy them out. It's not really worth it to do that. The other player, Scotty, that I wanted to ask about was because we just had a conversation about goaltending. Could they consider buying out a goalie? They have Peter Mrazek. They got Cam Talbot, both under contract. If they're supposedly exploring the goaltending market and they can't offload one of these goalies via trade, do you think that that's a reasonable route to take?
Man, look, I am notoriously not in favor of the current goalie situation. If they are looking to improve in that, and they are looking for an improvement, as we talked about yesterday, in the goaltender room, then I guess you open the door for that discussion. I would like to think that Talbot has like rental trade value still. Mrazek absolutely does not. So I think that I don't know what I think. You can try and trade Talbot for a small return. You're not going to get a ton for him, but like I'd imagine he has somewhat of a market. Or you buy out Mrazek. Those are kind of the two routes in my eyes.
And I don't think this happens because Steve Yzerman got Mrazek because he wanted another goalie. Like, we have 2 goalies under contract. This is very intentional, much to our chagrin. But if it were to happen, just hypothetically speaking, right? Cam Talbot would save you $1.6 million this season because he would only cost $833,000, and he would cost $833,000 next year. This season, he would come off the books. So if you bring in a new goalie, you could buy one out, and then bang, down to $833,000. Like, that's all it's costing you in the additional year. And for Peter Mrazek, it costs you $883,000 in the additional year, and you would save $1.7 million by getting him off your books. So it's for this upcoming year. So it's just there is like a little bit like if they were to trade for John Gibson now between now and I think the buyout window closes on June 30th. Yeah, okay, I could see it. But it's just highly unlikely. It's just a fun hypothetical. Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. All right, Scotty. We'll have the segment 3, and when we come back, we'll riff a little bit about the end of the Cup final as the Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup for the 2nd straight year. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup for the 2nd straight year, beating the Edmonton Oilers yet again. What's your instant reaction, man, to the Florida Panthers?
They're a really good hockey team. That's kind of my reaction. The Canadian curse lives on. That's kind of funny to me, but man, like I really do feel for Connor at this point. The defense that they were playing was hilarious. They were literally like, we'll put half the ice on Connor alone. We don't care, dude. Like, it's literally, they're like, we'll put 3 bodies on Connor at all times. And it, like, make somebody else beat us. We don't give a bleep. Like, it was kind of wild to watch, but really, my first thought was just that the Panthers are a really, really good roster. That is, if you are building like a prototype hockey team, we saw like Vegas kind of follow a similar model, or I guess the Panthers came after that, so maybe they're following the Vegas model. Either way, like that kind of similar in that regard, where it's like there is crazy depth, they're physical, but they also have the explosive top-end talent. And I guess that's not really a model. That's just like everything everybody wants out of a roster. That's just like a good hockey team. But, yeah, they're crazy good. One of the best goalies in the sport. Extremely physical, but also can fill the back of the net. And, yeah, man, it's a tough thing for anybody to overcome, no less an Oilers team that, while had clear improvements in the depth scoring department, at the end of the day, trotted out 2 AHL goalies to try to go up against Bob, and that's not a matchup you're going to win, McDavid or not.
I'm glad you brought that up because that is exactly where I was going to go. Everything you said about the Panthers is true. But man, the Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard tandem is not the answer, and they have other issues too. Like their defense is abysmal. Defensively, they're so bad in their own end, and they've been able to cover it up with having 2 of the best players in the game, on top of Zach Hyman, Evander Kane, who can also score. Right. But it's just Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They are screwed. Like, they are in trouble. Their goaltending situation is not good, and we just broke down the goaltender market yesterday. The options on the free agent market are not better. So you are in a really tough situation if you're Edmonton, where you have to try. They have got to try and improve their defense and improve their goaltending And for goaltending, they're going to likely have to go through the trade market, which, hey, we just talked about 2 goalies that if we're also supposedly in the trade market, we can give you Cam Talbot and give you Peter Mrazek if you want. So interesting situation that Edmonton's in. They've been doing this for years, and they've gotten a little bit better over time. You mentioned it. Their depth scoring's a lot better. They're not just so top heavy anymore. They are very top heavy, but that's more to do with the sheer talent of McDavid and Draisaitl than it is the lack of depth down the lineup. But it's just you have got to find a way to make your team have a better defensive game and put a goalie, because like you can insulate your goaltending to a certain extent, but Stuart Skinner's performance in the Stanley Cup Final just was not up to snuff. And it wasn't up to snuff last year either. It wasn't up to snuff all playoffs. Like, they've got to improve between the pipes if they actually want to win the Cup.
If it wasn't him, it was Captain Picard, baby. So,
well, and they got thoroughly dismantled in the Stanley Cup Final, yes. But on the flip side of that coin, they made it to the Cup Final in back-to-back years with this goaltending tandem. So in reality, they only need to get a little bit better, get to league average in that category, and you're probably winning the Stanley Cup. Like, they just struggle to improve in that area. It's very similar kind of to what Toronto's had to go through for a long time. Now, Toronto did get better defensively this year, and goaltending did stabilize quite a bit. The end of the day, they just still got bullied. But, I mean, this is just... I don't know, man. Connor McDavid deserves a Stanley Cup, and I want him to win a Stanley Cup, but just you can't keep trotting out Stuart Skinner and expecting it to improve, right? Like the definition of insanity, right? It's just, and this is nothing, it's not a shot at Stuart Skinner, the person. He's a great person, but just you're talking about trying to build a championship team, and I think it's very clear he and Picard are not the answer.
Right. They, again, unless they just want to go... like kind of what the Avs did and just be like, we're just going to try to score 6 a night, that they're going to have to improve.
Well, I think they have tried that.
Well,
it worked up until they played a team that has literally do the Florida Panthers have a single flaw? Can you think of a single flaw that the Florida Panthers have?
Yeah, no, not really.
No, they're so oppressively dominant. Sam Bennett did win the Conn Smythe, by the way, which is fantastic for him. I hope the Wings stay away because he is going to get a bag like no other team. And don't get me wrong, I want Sam Bennett the player. I don't want Sam Bennett the cap hit. Like, I think I've hit my threshold. I've been saying like they need to swing for a player, right? All offseason. I think I've hit my limit. Like the Conn Smythe run he went on, like it scares me, man. Like a guy who has a career high of 50 points in the regular season, he's going to get 10 plus million if he hits the open market. I don't think he will. But if he hits the open market, I'd be like, dude, that would scare the living daylights out of me to giving him that kind of money. I
agree.
Nah. I think that's the player I would try to recreate in the aggregate rather than spend 10 million on a one.
Recreate him in the aggregate.
That was congratulations to Sam Bennett. He has earned every single penny he's about to get on a contract. I just hope my team does not give him the $10+ million. That's insane. He had a crazy good run. He was incredible in the playoffs. But oh boy, Conn Smythe, congratulations. The only other thing is I thought it was really cool that the Florida Panthers, let every single first timer have the cup first, have their lap first. A lot of players on that team. They won it last year, so they allowed players who had yet to have won it, like Seth Jones, to
feel
carry
about
the puck for the first time.
They're calling it Brad Marchand Summer. How are we feeling about that?
He's also going to get a lot of money, and the thing about him is it's going to be under. I would still be very hesitant. He's 37 years old, man. He was so good, though.
Dude,
I don't know.
He looked like he was in his prime. On the ice.
I know. He looked like he was in his prime still, and it was insane. Just his age alone, I don't know, man. He's going to get at least 4 years, so you'll be paying him until he's 41. He's going to be getting it probably close to $8 million if he hits the open market. I'm getting a little cold feet getting close to July 1st here with some of these players, man. I'm getting a little bit of cold feet.
All spring, Brian's been like, open the pocketbook, spend some money, bring somebody in, and now it's time. And Brian's like, you know what? Never mind.
But we've talked specifically about a lot of these players that I would be willing to swing a little bit for. But just like this, and Sam Bennett, I was all in on earlier in the playoffs because he had yet to complete this crazy run. And I was like, $8 million would be pricey, but I'd do it. If we're getting into the $10 million range,
Wrong.
not doing it. Like, I have a limit.
It's
I want to
not
swing for the
feud. That's crazy.
man, it makes me anxious. Makes me anxious. Just trade for Robertson instead. Let's make that happen. In 25-year-old.
I'm down.
Scotty, final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Okay.